G'day and welcome to 3 Ways to 30K Promotions. I'm so thrilled that you're here to join us. I know there's people just starting to come into the waiting room and joining us, so I will get started and underway in a moment. Thank you, firstly, for giving up your absolute valuable time. I know that our time these days is our most valuable resource, and I'm super pumped that you chose to spend it here with me today. What I want to do is really get us underway so that you can make the most of our time together. And at the end, I'll pause the recording and we can certainly have a chat about all the things, and I can give you some individualized support and assistance around that. So let's get cracking. Now, 3 ways to a 30K promotion. Can I promise that? Absolutely not. But is it the trend and what I see happen with most people as we work on building their career and moving from just being a good operational leader to a great leader? Absolutely 100%. So while we're waiting for everyone to come in, tell me in the chat box, where are you coming from? What's your role and what do you do there? So in the chat box, tell me a bit about where are you coming in from and what's your role? Okay, just checking out the chat box. Hello, Marie. Okay, so Marie, great, you're a manager. You have 3 staff in a regional area for a government agency. How are you going, Marie? Good to see you. Tom's been a leader for a little while, a couple of years now, a manager. Yep, again, a small team, and you're part of a bigger, broader department. Awesome. Thanks, Tom. And Joe's coming in from Melbourne. G'day, Joe. Riley, hi Riley, welcome. Riley's coming in from Parramatta. Okay, beautiful. And you're working at a government regulator. Awesome. I'll keep letting everyone else arrive, but great to see all of you here with us today. It is awesome to be here with you as well. And so why are we here? And let's just really think about what we're hoping to achieve. And I always like to begin by paying my respects to traditional custodians of the land on which we're gathering. Hopefully many of you, I think some of you are going to be in Eora Nation and other nations. I'm coming in from Wonnarua and Darkinjung land, and so I pay my respects to all those elders that I've had the privilege to work and walk alongside of, as well as all of those who have been part of the backbone of the building of this beautiful country. Firstly, thank you. Thank you for giving up your time, as I said, and your energy to be here. And my promise to all of you, Marie and Riley and Tom and everyone who is jumping on, is that number one, I want it to be super practical, step by step, and really hands-on. So I really want you to be thinking with the lens of how could I apply this in my own manager to leader journey. Number 2 is it may be temporary, as in a feeling like overwhelm. I'm not here to make your life more overwhelming, but sometimes in the beginning, we can throw everything in the pan, and so it feels a bit messy until we start to pull it apart again. But number 3 is I promise it will be worth your time. I really want to add value. My whole career now is based around how can I add more value to managers and leaders like yourself. And I truly want to be of service, which is why I do calls and trainings like this each and every month on different topics for free, because I love to see transformation happen. And I particularly love to work with government leaders and corporate leaders and managers, because I know that you make a huge difference in the life of all the people that work for you. So I know if I can just work with kind of those middle managers, they can have the biggest impact across their organization. Please make sure you download your worksheets. I will pop them into the chat box so that you can grab them if you want to follow along. So grab those there now. All right. So why are we here, right? By the end of this masterclass, I want you to have a deeper understanding of the number one thing that is holding most managers back from becoming more competent, more confident, and more credible as leaders. And they are the linchpin critical 3 pillars from which I know your career can soar. I'll also be sharing the 3 drainers or the obstacles that may be stopping you from moving up that ladder or moving across in the career lattice, whatever it is that your aim or goal is to do. And lastly, I'm going to share my simple 3-step progression strategy to help you fast track your career so that you can get on with promotions. You can start earning that extra 30K a year or whatever it might look like for yourself and your family. So in my 25-year career, I've worked with thousands of managers and leaders, literally thousands. I'm up in the high 20,000s mark now. And particularly, I've worked a lot in the public sector, the government, whether that's local, state, or federal government. And also, I've worked a lot with large corporates. And I particularly work with managers and leaders who have 1 or more staff. So rather than just technical people who don't have any direct reports, I tend to work with managers and leaders who actually have other humans that they are responsible for and that they're leading and managing. And in this 3 ways to 30K, what I found is that most government managers are great at what they do. That is, they've worked their way up through the ranks. They're really good at their technical skills. They love their work. They're known for what they do. They've often got a degree or something behind them in that field, but they aren't necessarily equipped to grow a successful leadership career. And so for many of them, they can start feeling a bit stuck or a bit overwhelmed. Like, why are other people getting ahead? Why are other people getting promotions and I'm stuck here when I really know my stuff, right? And so maybe you're wearing all the hats as well. Maybe you feel like I'm doing all the things, but when it comes to my career, I could be doing a little bit more. If I was really honest and took a step back, I'm working on the job and I'm not working on me necessarily. So maybe you've got some big goals and maybe you're a bit confused or overwhelmed, or you just don't know what's my right next step. Like, how am I going to build to where I feel I can really leverage my time and my energy and where my skills would be of great value to the organization. So a little bit about my story. I certainly didn't start out in a senior leadership position, who in us do, but I started out pretty lucky. I got a government job straight away in healthcare, straight out of uni. I did some work experience. I managed to grab a maternity relief position that was just a part-time couple of days a week, and it quickly escalated into a full-blown officer role in a large healthcare hospital. And what I found was my career, and this is a bit of a kind of mud map timeline of my career. My journey went from that career grew and grew, and I spent my first 7 years working in the healthcare sector. And I moved around from some different jobs where I became a manager in a large hospital. I then went on to be across a health service. I then went to the state and looked after the manager part of the state that I was in. And so my career, with a few little bumps, really went up and up and up. But what I found is I had some promotion opportunities while I was there, and I just didn't back myself because I was like, I'm still a new uni grad. So even though I was 3, 4, 5 years into my career, I still hesitated and would go, someone else knows more than me, so I can't possibly go for that next level or that director role. And so in the end, I ended up jumping into a new role in education. And I've got a bit of a dip here. It was less about the role. I loved that it was a challenge and learning a whole new sector and field. It was also a government role. But what I found was I was working for a manager or leader that was very laissez-faire, but didn't have a lot of structure to the role. And so it was really hard to know, am I going well? How should I be succeeding? There was lots of moving parts, which absolutely is no excuse, right? But I just found it hard to win at that role because there was no role clarity. And it did feel a lot like my role became a bit of a dumping ground for what they didn't want to do, as opposed to having some clear trajectory for the position, some clear goal setting. And that was a real learning for me, because I'd had great leadership before in healthcare, where that leader had been probably a bit more directive while I was a newbie. And so here I was floundering, going, I'm not sure how much scope I have to set my own goals and boundaries. I'm not sure how much scope I have to actually shape what this role looks like. And so I actually found it really challenging because of the leadership that I was receiving. And I went on then to work in a government regulator. And in that role, it was a really challenging environment. It was a challenging culture, but I loved the challenge of that. And I loved being a manager who later became a director there in that role. I was the youngest female director they'd ever had. And the ups and downs of that are more around staff changes, political changes, ministerial changes that then fluctuated the experience of the role. But I loved that work, and I loved that it got to make a difference in the community and the people that we served. And I really found it a challenge and an opportunity. And I really found my own groove and started to kind of hold on to my own career. And rather than waiting for a leader to spell it out for me, I got much clearer on what do I want to achieve and how am I going to do that. And so I really got better at steering my own career ship. The dip at the end of that really came because I found that I was working way too hard, too many hours. And I thought that the only way to get ahead in my career was just to do more. So I started to burn out. I literally fried myself physically because I started to just work longer hours. I tried to really be the support person for my team of staff. And so that meant that I was just doing all the things. And I literally burnt myself out. I hired a coach to help me and support me through some of that, and to help me really look at my career and what do I want to do next. And I was quite fortunate that I got to senior positions quite early in my career. And so I had this kind of opportunity to stop and reflect and go, what do I actually want to do next? How do I want to create? And while I was working with that coach, I really went, I love what you're doing and I want to do that. And so I actually started my own business. And I went from a high six-figure salary to earning something like 28,000 in my first year. Literally, it was quite a wake-up call to learn that once I didn't have a big company or brand behind me and I was essentially selling myself, that all my stuff came up. And I had all of these blocks that I didn't even perceive around money and my self-worth and my belief in myself. And so I really had to hire some other coaches, get some other support, get business coaches and work on myself, work on my own self-belief and work on my confidence. And that's when I started to see my business take off and my growth take off. So I want to share a little bit with you about how can you navigate your career, maybe some of those challenges you can relate to as well. And I also just want to see how can I add value. You know, I learned really quickly in my career how much a mentor or an advisor could totally transform your experience of work and could really support you to do well and do better. And so I want to offer that to as many people as I can. And so my offer to you with this, I'm not selling you a program through this lovely, free call. I just want to be of service. And so you can book a free career brainstorming session with me with the link below. And I will be sure to pop that here in the chat box for you guys. Yes, Riley, I'll pop the link in here. So let me drop that in now. So if that's of interest to you, I'll pop that link in now. Awesome. So perhaps you're interested in what's my career going to look like? Where do I want to go next? And absolutely, this career brainstorming session is going to give you some really juicy tips and some practical stuff about what's my next step. I'm always about what's the shift that I need to make in order to move ahead the fastest. And tiny shifts, small shifts often have the biggest impact. So let's jump into what I wanted to share and support you around today. So what I find is that most managers and leaders that probably are somewhere in their career path, like I described in mine, they have the same 3 obstacles that hold them back. And so I want to share with you what are those 3 obstacles, but also suggest 3 simple solutions that help you overcome them and that I know helped me in my own career so that you can kind of get unstuck if that's where you are. And lastly, what I want to help you do is come up with a bit of a one plan. So having a really simple mud map, a bit of a roadmap for where do I go next. So what you really need is a career growth plan. What I found when I jumped sometimes from a job to a different job is I just went, that opportunity sounds good, but I didn't really have a career plan. I didn't have a clear pathway for how I was going to do that. I just went for the next opportunity. What I found with the thousands of managers that I've worked with, though, is that a simple step-by-step system to grow your leadership career will help you focus on what you're really good at, and then it helps other people grow too. So it is literally a win-win. It is not about doing more like I thought it was when I got to that burnout phase. It's in fact about doing less. And that's what I want to help you do. Because once you've got this kind of plan, this roadmap in place, and you're knowing what's my next shift, how do I follow that plan, then you can stop feeling like an imposter. You can stop climbing all the wrong career ladders. And let me tell you, if you're climbing the wrong career ladder, you are literally spending time building something that you don't want. And you'll arrive there and wonder, what the heck was I doing? You can stop trying to do it all yourself. And that's why I burnt out, because I was trying to carry my team rather than just empowering and enabling them. You can also really stop the uncertainty and stop the weeds growing in your career where you're accepting less than you're worth, where you're not following your passions and pursuits, and where you find that, you know, I only love 10% of my role. I'm doing all this stuff that I don't love. So we want to cut those out. You don't need to binge on more podcasts. You don't need to do a dance on TikTok to get ahead in your career. You don't need to do it all. And I know I was a bit of a sponge. I am still a learning junkie. In the Gallup Strengths Test, learning is one of my highest 5. So of course, anytime I was looking for something different, or I started to get where I was like, I'm stale in my role, or I want something new, I need a new challenge, I would be reading all the books, listening to all the things. And so I want to say, stop. We don't need to do all of that. Instead, you just need a clear roadmap, a bit of a process and a plan for how am I going to step up my career to the next shift, the next phase, the next evolution that I want it to take. And I call this the manager to leader shift. And so what we're going to focus on today is making this shift from just being a good manager to becoming a great leader, which is satisfying for your people and for yourself. So grab a pad and pen, grab those worksheet notes if you haven't already, download that, and we can jump and get right into it. Okay, so let's talk about what's the number one thing holding you back. I'm going to ask everyone in the chat box, what do you think is the number one thing holding you back? So let's have a look. Marie says a lack of contacts. Yeah, it could be that you don't have a big enough network to introduce you to people. Riley, yep, just not knowing or knowing what options are out there. Yeah, so maybe you just don't know what's possible, what options are out there. Joe, confidence. Yeah, so you might be more specific about that. Right, so putting yourself out there. Yeah, like being able to kind of sell yourself, put yourself forward, and feeling brave and bold enough. Completely. You're really on the money there. Let's jump right in, because the number one thing that holds leaders back, in my experience from the thousands of leaders I've worked with, is all in here. It's self-doubt. It's just not believing I can do it and that I'm worth it. And so that is something we absolutely must look at addressing if that's what's holding us back. And sadly, and not to be gender biased, but I find that women more than men are more challenged by this. So if we have self-doubt and it's holding back our career progression, we really want to think about what are some of the ways to overcome that, okay? And so let's have a look at obstacle 2. I'm just going to jump ahead for a moment because I really want to get into the meat of things. So obstacle 2 is if you have no plan, right? And we talked about that's what I was doing, weaving all over the place, not having clarity in a plan. And the third obstacle that I find is low trust. Now, that might sound strange, but it's kind of what I think, Riley, you were alluding to, is not having the network, not having enough people know, like, and trust you, not having enough people know what you can do and what the value is that you bring as a manager. And so that's what I mean by low trust, not that the people that work with you don't trust you, but that you have low trust base, like the foundation of that's low because you don't have enough people who are aware of what you do. And so let's do a really mini audit to get some clarity. So I'm going to invite you now to have a look at the roadmap clarity questions. And we're going to walk through that. You'll see these questions in that. I'm going to kind of ask you some questions and we're going to walk through. And the idea is to put a tick where you feel you're at right now with each of these. So it's basically based on the traffic light system. So it's red if you're a no to it. It's amber if you're a, I've got some of that, but not completely. And green is I'm all over it. I am across that 100%. Okay. So when we look at the solutions to support these, what we want to do is firstly build our confidence, right? Because that's the way we're going to overcome our self-doubt. So take a moment and just do the little mini audit that is in the handout sheet. Let's take a moment, grab that out, and can you just type in the chat box done when you have that ready to go? Okay, so everyone's got that now. Grab that copy. And let's just go through the questions together. So remember, you might have a red, amber, or green pen, or you just might want to tick the column, which is easy to do. So number 1, I know my career success is up to me and I'm prepared to make it happen. Red, amber, or green. Number 2, you'll see I know my personal strengths and how to best leverage them. Number 3, I've got a healthy sense of my own self-worth and the value that I bring to the table. And remember, this is probably one of the lowest. So don't be afraid to score yourself a red or an amber, because as we heard, this is what really can be a big challenge for most managers or leaders. I use a simple framework for delivering feedback regularly to my team members. So this is all about how we actually lead and manage others. Have a simple and effective way to measure productivity and make improvements. Do you have that? Red, amber, or green? I focus 80% of my time on activities that are of high value and high impact. Red, amber, or green? So I'm going to encourage you to keep working through that document. And when you're ready, I'll put a minute on the clock and you just put done into the chat box. Okay, great. Everyone is pretty much done. So keep that in front of you, because what it's going to do is give you the tips and the areas that you most want to look at and follow along with. So as I was saying, solution 1 to overcome that self-doubt, and I know a few of you said in the chat box that that was one of your highest. I know Katie, Nabil, Riley, you all mentioned that that was something you want to work on. So there is a few different ways we can work on building our confidence. And in the work that I do with managers and leaders, we specifically focus on these ones. We focus on knowing your own worth and mastering that self-worth, not to become cocky, but to become certain about your own skills and expertise and what you bring to the table. we really become better leaders and managers when we already know what it is that we can bring. It makes us easier to follow. It makes us easier to hire. It gives us an appeal where we have this confidence and a surety that we know what we can deliver. And it also prevents us being walked over, taken advantage of being put in a box, shall we say. The second thing is really knowing our personal strengths. And there's loads of ways you can do that. You can do a Gallup strengths test. There's a high five test you can do online. And I can share all these as resources. If anyone wants to book one of those career brainstorm sessions, we can certainly look at some of your strengths and where your next step might be the best fit. This is also a really simple tool called the SIGN method. You can use that if you want to take a screenshot of this page. It's a great method of working out what might some of my personal strengths be. So when we work within our strength zone, we tend to get like up to 30% more productivity. So we ideally want to be pursuing career progression into areas that allow us to do more of what we're good at. If we're taking ownership as well, we build our confidence. So by taking ownership, we actually get really super aware of what is underneath our behavior. So in this picture, the identity iceberg, which is used a lot by psychologists, it's all about what are all the beliefs and the skills and the thoughts and the attitudes and the experiences and things that I have that make up what the behavior is you see. And that way, if we want to see different behavior, we want to become more confident, we have to work on those things underneath the iceberg in order to grow what's above. So we can certainly address those in one of the career brainstorming sessions as well. The second solution to the issue of not having a plan, which is what I said I was doing when my career was a bit all over the place, right? Because I was accepting opportunities, getting tapped on the shoulder, but I didn't have a clear direction for myself. So I was just taking whatever kind of came my way. Instead, what we want to do is build our competence, and we can do that in a number of ways. So one way is to get better at our own time management, to actually start to go, where do I invest these valuable resources I have? And imagining we had, a couple of $100, would I put it in technical, people, or planning? And what would the split of those be? So actually getting better at batching our time, using our time wisely, right? Time is just a resource. When we spend it, it's gone. So we want to really think about, how am I investing and am I doing that in the best way that supports where I want to go as well as my organization, and not that I'm just spending my time growing other people's dreams and visions. We also want to get really better at our productivity, as opposed to just time management day by day. We want to start improving our productivity overall. And if we're stuck in the management headspace, we usually aren't as productive as we are if we start moving into a leadership mindset. And a leader thinks longer term, bigger picture, not just day by day, week by week. We can also do this by setting really clear, smart goals for ourselves and being really deliberate in, how do we want our career to look? What evidence would show us that we're getting there? What are the KRAs, KPIs, whatever you might call them, that would allow me to measure my progress towards where I want to go, right? And lastly, actually asking for constructive feedback, getting better not only at giving feedback, but also asking for it. And we want to get better at being specific. What specifically do you want to grow in? That's the kind of feedback you need to be asking from your boss, your peers, your mentor, your coach. You want to really be getting some feedback that's constructive, that's not just Pollyanna, and that gives you really actionable steps so that you can continue to build and grow. The third solution to overcome that low trust, and remember I said it's not about your team actually not trusting you, it's about how many people know who I am and what I am. It's kind of your brand trust, your personal brand, is to build your credibility. And there's a whole heap of different ways we can do that as well. What I like to work on with people, and I've found to be the most effective, is firstly peer-to-peer networking. And that is just starting to have some more genuine conversations, moving down in this funnel from the safe conversations about the footy last week or the rain that we've been having, and moving into riskier conversations about, I have to discipline a staff member and I'm really concerned that it might go badly, or I'm thinking about asking or putting my hand up for an opportunity or a special project, and I'm nervous about this and this. And actually talking in genuine ways, being a bit more vulnerable with our peers. We can also start thinking about, how am I building others, in particular my team? How cohesive is my team? Are they working together? And do I have this trust, which means competence and character? Is my team good at what they do, but also good at getting along? Do they have high IQ, but also high EQ? And am I building that and fostering that in the environment, the culture of my team? And I have a simple tool that actually has 5 different areas and levers that you can pull on to create more high performance cultures. And if we do a one-on-one 15-minute brainstorm, we can also even talk about these if it's your team that you most want to work on in your career. And lastly, developing others, being more individuals. And I teach a really simple coaching model that follows the gear shift. If anyone still drives a manual, I love manual cars as opposed to automatics. But if anyone remembers, this is kind of like a 5-speed gearbox, you know, or 4-speed and reverse. And so I like to teach, thinking about the gears, a really simple coaching model that helps shift your staff out of being dependent on you as the manager to being inspired by you, motivated by you, but having clarity of role from you as a leader so that they can deliver without you needing to handhold. This is the thing that I really, in that education part of my career, was looking at from a leader and didn't kind of get what I needed. And so I went out and sought it out, and then got taught in how to actually become a great coach leader. And so this area, or specifically you'll see in your roadmap, if you're low in this, then it's time to build some of your coaching skills. So all of this and your traffic light kind of audit to get that clarity fills in and moves into where I work with leaders. And so what we've been looking at is this bottom section here, which is really for supervisors and people who are looking at that level 1, 0 to 3 staff. I then tend to work more closely in small groups with managers who have up to sort of 15 staff, because some of their issues and challenges are a bit different to first-time leaders and managers. And so we work a lot on actually influencing up, motivating performance, navigating change, which is the reality, right? And then the top 2 levels for senior leaders and executives is where I do my work one-on-one with a very select few people who really want to move into that executive directorship space, and to do that without burning out. You know, I've learned lots of lessons, and I've also been trained in yoga therapy and stress management in order to support people to become great leaders that also don't kill themselves in the process. And so this clear roadmap helps you look at, what's my right next shift? So instead of being overwhelmed by all the things and having to do everything all at once, you literally just month by month or even quarter by quarter choose, what's my next gap that I just want to work on a shift for that. So it's super simple. It's spelt out for you. It is literally scaffold to build your career. So that plan, once you have that, it just takes a few hours to kind of set it up and work out where you want to go. And then about an hour a week, I reckon, to maintain, to keep your credibility, to keep building your muscle, to keep working on yourself. That's all I think it takes. And yet, most managers and leaders I talk to are still working on the team or working on the organization that they work for, and they're not investing in themselves. So I'm encouraging you to really think about investing in you. So if this all still sounds like, oh, it's so much and there's lots in this and I want to drill down and double down on it all, again, remember I'm offering a free brainstorming session. There's a link below and I've popped it in the chat box. I would love to walk through. It's a really brief call. It won't take up too much of your time, but it will just help you look at what's your career goals, where might be your next best shift, and can I help you if that's at all possible. So I'd love to answer your questions now individually. Nabil and Pons, I saw you pop some questions in the chat box, and so did Marie. So I'm going to hop on over there. For those who are just on the recording, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for giving up your valuable time. Thank you for welcoming me into your world and your circle. And if you're not already connected to me, please do connect with me on LinkedIn. That is the place that I hang out. So you can look me up on AJ Alexandra Joy on LinkedIn. And I'd love to meet you, chat more to you there. Have a super special day and may your career soar. Thanks very much.